From the small window of my ancestral cottage, I watched the monster rise. It was my new neighbor's mansion, a grotesque monument of glass and steel, casting a long, arrogant shadow over my humble home. The man, a brash tech millionaire named Alistair Finch, had built his monstrosity not just next to my property, but on it. He had bribed a corrupt surveyor, redrawn the property lines, and legally stolen the 20 acres of ancient woodland that had belonged to my family for 300 years. He called it optimizing his view. He saw me as a stubborn old woman, a relic to be swept aside. At the town hall meeting, he had laughed. "The law is on my side. The deed is filed. What's she going to do?" He thought his new money and slick lawyers made him invincible. He had no idea that my family didn't just own the land, we were part of its history. And in that history was a law, an ancient, forgotten easement, more powerful than any modern deed. My family, the O'Connells, were the first settlers in this valley. We weren't wealthy landowners, we were custodians. The 20 acres of woodland Alistair had stolen was not just land, it was sacred to us. It contained a natural spring and an ancient oak tree where generations of my family had been married and mourned. When Alistair arrived, he saw the valley not as a community, but as a canvas for his ego. He wanted the best view, and my woodland was in his way. The legal battle was short and brutal. His lawyers produced a new, officially stamped survey that showed the 20 acres as part of his property. The old survey maps, my only proof, were declared outdated. The court sided with him. I was defeated. I watched in silent fury as his bulldozers tore through the woods, clearing a path for his infinity pool and tennis courts. They left the ancient oak, but only because it was aesthetically pleasing from his new master bedroom. But in my grief, I remembered my grandmother's stories. She used to talk about the shepherd's path, an old right-of-way that our ancestors had granted to the valley's first church 2 centuries ago. It was an easement, a legal right for the public to cross our land to reach the historic church on the other side of the hill. It had fallen into disuse for 100 years, but was it still legally valid? For the next 6 months, while his mansion was being built, I lived in the county's dusty archives. I became a historian, a legal archaeologist, and then I found it. The original handwritten easement, signed and sealed in 1823. It was ironclad. It granted the public, in perpetuity, the right of passage 20 feet wide along the traditional shepherd's path. And the most beautiful part? I cross-referenced the old maps with Alistair's new architectural plans. The shepherd's path, the forgotten public right-of-way, ran directly through the center of his brand-new multi-million-dollar living room. I didn't file an injunction to stop the construction. That would have been too simple. I waited. I let him finish his masterpiece. I let him pour the concrete, install the floor-to-ceiling glass walls, and furnish it with priceless art. I let him host a lavish housewarming party, featured in a glossy architectural magazine. On the Saturday morning, after the magazine hit the newsstands, I made my move. I didn't call a lawyer. I called the local news. I also put a small, polite notice in the town's weekly newsletter and at the historic church. The notice read, "Community Revival of the Shepherd's Path Walk. Join us this Saturday at 10 a.m. to walk the historic trail to St. Anne's Church. The path is a legally protected public right-of-way. Refreshments will be served." That Saturday, a crowd of over 200 people gathered at the edge of my property, local families, history buffs, news reporters, and the entire congregation of the church. I stood at the head of the trail. "Thank you for coming," I said. "The path has been obstructed for a time, but the law is the law." I led them down the old trail, through the woods, and directly towards Alistair's gleaming new mansion. He came storming out onto his perfectly manicured lawn, his face purple with rage, security guards flanking him. "What is the meaning of this? Get off my property!" he screamed. I calmly handed him a copy of the 1823 easement. "This isn't your property, Mr. Finch," I said, loud enough for the news cameras to hear. "This is the Shepherd's Path, a public right-of-way, and we have the right to pass." His lawyers arrived, sputtering and threatening, but the ancient document was irrefutable. The police, who had been notified, were there not to arrest us, but to ensure our legal right of passage. The look on his face as he was forced to stand by and watch 200 people, including children with ice cream and a news crew, walk in a neat line through his front door, across his priceless Persian rug, straight through his living room and out the massive glass wall on the other side, was a work of art. We didn't just walk through once. The Shepherd's Path Historical Society was formed that day. We now hold public walks every Saturday. Sometimes it's 100 people, sometimes it's a scout troop, sometimes it's just me and my dog. He can't build a fence, he can't lock his doors. His multi-million-dollar private sanctuary has a public highway running through the middle of it. He stole my land for his view, and in return, I made his entire life public property.